stout yeomen one and all, and welcome to the Greenwood. My name is Thaddeus. I'm a museum education specialist and a folklore and history enthusiast. This introductory episode is meant to serve as something of a mission statement, and to set some expectations for this podcast and the types of episodes that you can expect. Into the Greenwood is all about the legendary figure of Robin Hood, the world in which he would have lived, and what his story means to us today. Now, I found that when discussing Robin Hood, one of the first questions that almost invariably comes up is, was Robin Hood real? So I figured we should get that one out of the way immediately. The answer is no. Sure, one can dredge up accounts of medieval outlaws who possibly maybe could have served as some form of inspiration for the earliest poems from the 14th century, but those connections are suppositional at best, and frankly, just have no substantive bearing on the legendary figure as he has come down to us today through folklore, literature, and popular culture. Over the course of this podcast, it's certainly possible, and even likely, that we will touch on this topic again. But I want to make it clear that we will not be looking at Robin Hood through the lens of him possibly having actually existed. Instead, we're going to be using Robin Hood as sort of a focal point from which to inspire questions that will help us learn more about the medieval world that really did exist. My aim is to interview a series of historians, anthropologists, and other experts from a variety of disciplines and fields of study to get a picture of what it possibly could have looked like for a band of scofflaws living and operating out of the forests of England around the end of the 12th century. How many men could reasonably be sheltered in Sherwood Forest at a time? What would their lives have been like? From their dwellings, to their diet, to their sources of entertainment? Was archery really so popular at the time that it could provide a convincing ruse with which a canny sheriff might attempt to ensnare a bold outlaw? What even did it mean to be a sheriff at that time? And how far did their authority reach? I've got a veritable quiver full of questions about medieval law, religion, how the Crusades would have impacted the people of England, and many, many more. Our first proper episode will be on the topic of buildings and lifestyles around the Nottingham area from the late 12th century, as we can understand them from historical records and archaeology. In addition to developing a better understanding of the actual world in which the Robin Hood stories are set, and appreciating what life would have been like for an outlaw at that time, we're also going to be examining who even is the character of Robin Hood that we think of. Is he a crusading knight who returned to find the life he'd left behind in shambles? Is he a yeoman from the peasant class, on the run from the law for the murder of a king's forester? Is he motivated by revenge or by altruism? Does he wear a distinctive pointed hat? Or do we prefer to think that his name is derived from his wearing of a hood? To get an idea of how we imagine Robin Hood and what he means to us, this podcast will also be delving into Robin's role in popular culture, especially through the cinema. There have literally been dozens of movies about Robin Hood over the last 100 years, and many of them are now hard to find. But from Douglas Fairbanks to Taron Egerton, and all of the Errol Flynn's, Kevin Costner's, and cartoon foxes in between, there's plenty of material to cover. Going in roughly chronological order of the available films, I'll be joined by different special guests to analyze, critique, discuss, and hopefully engage in some witty banter regarding these cinematic depictions of the centuries-old figure from medieval rural English folklore that has become synonymous with depictions of thievery, archery, green tights, and even class warfare. The release schedule for interview episodes and the film reviews will be determined by the availability of our guests, but the goal is to release an episode every other week or so. To help distinguish the episode types for listeners, the film reviews will be titled as Splitting Arrows. Along the way, I expect to produce additional bonus content based around reviews of textual sources, television shows, video games, and so on. If you have criticisms regarding the sound quality, you'll hear no arguments from me. but I will point out that we have a Patreon set up, and hopefully I'll be able to afford better equipment before long. You can go to patreon.com/intogreenwood to support us and gain access to extended interview segments, bonus materials, and other rewards. We are 100% listener supported, and every little bit is greatly appreciated. If you have any questions or feedback, or want to stay abreast of what we have coming up, you can also follow us on Twitter with the account @intogreenwood. You can also email us directly at intogreenwood@gmail.com. I look forward to taking this journey into the Greenwood with you. Thank you for listening. Into the Greenwood is written and produced by me, Thaddeus Papke. Our theme music is by Plastic 3, and the podcast is brought to you by listener support. Safe travels, one and all.